Hello, everybody. Okay, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're happy to see you. And I want to thank Caris Chris for having me to be part of this training today. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a privilege. Thank you. So we are on module 2 for mental health and well-being training course. And we started off with module 1, and I'm going to be sharing my screen shortly. Module 2. Okay, so module 2 is about emotions, behavior, and child development. That's what we're looking at in module 2. And the overview for this module, we are going to be exploring how emotions influence behavior, children's behavior, and typical stressors that affect mental well-being in school and home settings, and how educators and parents can recognize early signs of distress. It also builds on module 1 by focusing on emotional awareness, empathy, and early intervention strategies. Our learning objectives: 1 is to understand how emotions influence behavior and decision making in children and adolescents. 2, to identify common emotional and behavioral stressors in school and home environments, recognize signs that behavior may indicate emotional distress, and apply empathetic and supportive responses to help children manage their emotions effectively. This is going to be very exciting. So please, I'd like you to pay attention. Children's emotions are often more direct and immediate than adults, shaping their behavior in ways that are crucial for their development, and communication is very critical. So here are a few scenarios I'd just like us to discuss around. For instance, a child feeling frustrated. I'm sure we've seen this so many times. And the emotion is frustration, which arises from an unmet need or a blocked goal, And the behavioral response is a 3-year-old is trying to build a tower with blocks, maybe playing with a Lego or a building blocks, but they keep falling over. The blocks keep falling over. They might throw the blocks, cry, stomp their feet, or shout, "I can't do this," and all. I'm sure you've seen this severally. So the underlying mechanism is that the child lacks emotional regulation. The problem and problem-solving skills, of course. So we're going to be looking at how to solve this, as either a parent or an educator or a safeguarding lead or a counselor, right? So their behavior is a direct external expression of that internal emotion, right? Like we mentioned earlier, they are not intentionally being bad. They're simply overwhelmed and acting out their frustration because they don't know what else to do. Some parents will just go and beat the child. "Come on, shut up and stop acting like that." Or, as teachers, "Will you stand up from there and pack those things?" Not knowing how to attend to that frustration. Let's look at the second scenario: a child feeling scared or anxious. The emotion is fear, anxiety, often triggered by something perceived as threatening or unfamiliar. Now, the emotional response, or the behavioral response rather, is that a 5-year-old child starts a new kindergarten class and the child clings to their parent's leg, like a new school, a child coming to a new school, and avoids eye contact with the teacher and refuses to participate in group activities. They might become quiet, withdrawn, and they keep throwing tantrums and all. Now, the underlying mechanism for that action is that the child's brain, perceiving the new environment as a threat, triggers a fight, a flight, or sometimes we call it a freeze response. The child's clinging behavior is a form of flight as they seek safety and comfort from familiar figure, right? Like holding the parent's leg, clinging to someone familiar around them and all. So their withdrawal is a form of freeze, a natural protective response to an overwhelming social situation. It is very natural. So when this happens, you should know what to do rather than shout and rather than, feeling overwhelmed yourself. We're going to be discussing this further in the next module. Let's take some more scenarios. A child feeling proud. The emotion is pride, which comes from a sense of accomplishment or success. Now, the behavioral response is an 8-year-old child completes a complex math problem correctly. After struggling with it for a while, the child rushes to show the solution to his parent or teacher and sits up straighter and may have a beaming smile. They might also volunteer to answer other questions in class. Yes, I did it well. I hit my goal. I made it to tops. Now, the underlying mechanism in this scenario is that this is a positive emotion actually and acts as a powerful motivator. The child's behavior is a direct result of feeling good about their achievement. This positive feedback loop, feeling proud about an accomplishment and receiving positive recognition, encourages them to take on similar tasks, future challenges. They continue their learning and they are doing more exploits. And this is a positive mental health situation, as you can see, because it makes the child to even do better next time, depending on the response from the teacher or whoever the child runs to show that grade to. So because there are some teachers that were like, please, after all, this other person, you begin to compare the child with another child, so that can actually dampen his motivation. But there's how you respond to that child in a nice way that the child would even do more, Okay, let's take number 4 scenario, a child feeling empathy. The emotion is empathy, which is the ability to understand and share the feelings of other persons. The behavioral response is that a 6-year-old boy or girl sees his friend fall and scrap his knee and starts to cry. The 6-year-old immediately runs to the friend's side, offers a hug, and asks, "Are you okay? Do you need a bandage? Do you need a bandage?" They might even get a teacher for help. The underlying mechanism in this scenario is that the child is not just observing the friend's pain, but they are feeling a similar emotion and are moved to help. This is so good. This emotional connection actually directs and shapes compassion, helpful behavior, which is foundational in social development and building positive relationships. This is very, very awesome and should be encouraged. If you're that teacher or that parent that the child calls to see, that situation, please encourage the child, just say something nice to the child, so that the child can keep that up, because that is positive. We're going to be looking at key concepts on emotions, behavior, and child development. How emotions shape behavior. Children and teenagers express emotions through their behavior, through the way they act, the way they behave. When they lack the words or maturity to explain how they feel, their emotions often show up as actions like withdrawal, they get angry, or defiance, excessive silence sometimes. And understanding there are different emotional behavioral links can actually help us as adults respond with empathy rather than punishment. Because a lot of times we just go straight to punish the child. For instance, a child acting out in class may be anxious, tired, or maybe struggling with a relationship or with a question in class or a task. Or even from home, he may be feeling frustrated from home. Maybe mom or dad did something to the child and the child brought it to school. And you, as an adult around that child, you're also adding to the child's stress. So it's important for us to understand how emotions shape behavior so that we can know how to give positive responses to the students or children around us. So I'd like you to share at this point, some examples of behavior that were misinterpreted before, emotional causes were identified. Sometimes we just misinterpret children's behavior. We just misinterpret this person is seeking attention. Meanwhile, the child is actually facing some frustrations in an aspect of his or her life that we've not been able to comb out, because we too do not know We don't know what the child is going through or what the children are going through. So we just assume. So I'd like you to share in the comment section, some examples of behavior that were misinterpreted before the emotional causes were identified. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, so we'll go back to the chat box shortly, but let's just continue. Typical stressors in school and home life. I'd like us to just look at the stressors. Yeah, there are stressors that vary depending on the child's age, depending on the child's environment, depending on the personality of the child. Yeah, recognizing these stressors would help prevent emotional overload. There are common stressors like academic pressure or fear of failure, pair relationships, bullying, of course, family conflicts or changes at home like divorce, relocation, or death of a loved one, lack of rest, lack of proper eating, nutrition, or lack of play. Children need time to play. When these things are not met, it can actually become stressors. Yeah, so we're still looking at stressors. Lack of rest, I mentioned that earlier. Another important stressors, especially for teenagers, is social media influence and comparison. So they look at the social media of others, they look at the pictures and status of others and begin to compare themselves. This can actually cause stressors. We don't want to delve into this because we have a training coming up shortly that we're going to handle all this. Feeling unheard or misunderstood can actually cause stressors. These are contributors, okay? Okay, so you can also add some stressors in the comments chat box, comment section, so that we can discuss this later on. So let's recognize when behavior signals distress. There are some instances that we just say, okay, the child is behaving this way because of his age or her age. But when is behavior actually a cause for concern? That's what we're going to be looking at now. So please pay attention as we move deeper. Some behavioral changes are normal as children grow, but persistent or extreme shifts can signal emotional distress. Being observant and compassionate helps, adults intervene early. It's important for us to be very observant. It's important for us to show compassion so that we can help the students or the children around us. While some shifts into child's behavior are a natural part of growing up, like I mentioned, we should be attentive to changes that are persistent or extreme. These significant shifts may be a sign of underlying emotional distress, like we mentioned in the scenarios earlier on. By observing children closely and responding with compassion, we can actually intervene and provide the necessary support that they need. Some warning signs may include as things you need to look out for: sudden withdrawal or isolation. This could be from a child that is very interactive and very sociable. All of a sudden, the child is isolating himself or herself. These are signs to look out for. Decline in academic performance or motivation. A child that used to come tops in the class all of a sudden begins to go down. It's a warning sign. Frequent mood swing or irritability. The child begins to feel very irritated with anything you do or say around him or her. Aggression or defiance beyond usual pattern. Changes in eating or sleeping habits. These are things you need to look out for, very important. Excessive worrying, when a child begins to cry too much or express hopelessness. Please, I don't know why this life is like this. I don't know why this is happening to me. When the child begins to complain a lot, this is not the usual person that you used to know. All of a sudden, these changes occur. Please, these are warning signs, okay? Yeah, and remember, you're not to diagnose because you're not a therapist. Just observe and refer to the appropriate professional when necessary, depending on the environment you find yourself. If it's a school, of course, refer to the school counselor or the pastoral leads or the safeguarding leads, as the case may be. Okay, so I need you to do this quickly in your reflection journal. Think of a time when a child's behavior reflected an unmet emotional need. What could have been done differently? Please do this shortly, and we'll jump over to the next thing that we have for today. Okay, so let's just wrap up what we've looked at in Module 2. Our keynotes for Module 2 is that emotions drive behavior. So understanding each of these scenarios that we mentioned today would really give you a lead and a guide into becoming more compassionate and responding with empathy. It's very important. Children's behavior is a form of communication. They tend to, communicate through their behavior. So look out and be more sensitive when you see children feeling frustrated or having those warning signals we mentioned earlier. Recognizing stressors can prevent emotional escalation and improve well-being. Adults who respond with empathy model emotional regulation for young people. And I recommend these resources. Please look out for UNICEF Emotional Wellbeing in Schools, APA Understanding Emotions in Child Development, Mind UK Helping Children Manage Stress, Local School Counseling and Support Services. These are resources that would really help if you're in the mental health space. All right. Thank you and have a beautiful time answering the questions and dropping your answers. So we'll move over to Module 3. Yeah.